With us now is Mr. Pavel Horak or Dr. Pavel Horak, who has just finished his doctoral research on neo-pagans and the influence of Christianity on neo-pagans in Europe in the Department for the Study of Religions, Czech Republic, University of Pardubice. So, welcome Pavel Horak. So, you have worked on this neo-pagans. So, can you briefly explain to our students what is the topic that you worked on and what did you come up with as a result of your research?
See, neo-pagans are that's a new religious movement which emerged in 1950s, 1960s in Europe, and these people try to revive and reconstruct pre-Christian European traditions of our ancestors, especially those of Celtic, Germanic, and Slavic tribes, and to live them and revive them in modern world, basically.
So these new pagans, they think that they are following the tradition which is 2000-year old from the ancient time.
That's right,
That's what
but see, some of the traditions are claimed to be old, but there are also other which the very neo-pagans consider as a modern reconstruction. So there can be both, basically, like a modern reconstruction and a claim that this particular or that particular tradition is old.
Like a Christian in Europe, he or she goes to church, lights a candle, kneels down in front of the icon of Jesus Christ or Mother Mary. What does a new pagan do?
Neo-pagans follow rituals and customs which basically comes from folk customs, and they also do follow kind of magical celebrations or rituals which are of modern origin, basically, as I've told, like late 19th century, 20th century origin. And these rituals should resemble those pre-Christian traditions and customs of the European ancestors. So there is a nature worship, putting offerings to the fire. You can see invocation or evocations of gods and goddesses, mainly in the nature, on the top of the hills, nearby the lakes. So all kinds of things which would resemble the so-called pagan past of Europe.
Do they have a building which they call a temple or a church, something?
No, they don't use special buildings in general. You can find few exceptions on Iceland, for instance, or Nordic countries, Northern Europe, but those are very rare examples. The most common way of following neo-pagan tradition is to go into the nature and perform the ritual outside.
And what gods do they do this worship to?
God worship depends on the particular tradition, what that particular neo-pagan follows. There are basically four main branches of neo-paganism, and that also counts for the gods or goddesses you would like to invoke. So the four traditions are these. The first and the most well-known is something which is called Wicca, or contemporary pagan witchcraft. And this was created in 1940s, 1950s in Great Britain. and these people call themselves as witches, and they do worship god and goddess, masculine and feminine force, and they would consider all goddesses as the face of one goddess, one feminine power, all gods as one, as a resemblance of one god, one masculine kind of power, and this is the basic of the first and most well-known branch, as I called Wicca, or pagan witchcraft. Then there are 3 more branches which are based on the foundations of customs of pre-Christian European tribes, the Celts, Germans, and Slavic tribes. So those particular people would invoke Celtic gods and goddesses, Germanic, some people might call them Viking gods and goddesses, and Slavic, which is like eastern part of Europe and Russia. So that the invocation of particular gods and goddesses would depend on the particular branch you are following.
Let me ask you more this textbook-like questions which comes from the Christian background. Do they have a founder? Do they have a holy text?
See, there are no holy texts in paganism, in the modern one. Although there are many, let's say, how to do books, and the only founder we can speak of would be Gerald Gardner, an old pensioned British custom officer who worked in Indonesia back in first half of 20th century, and this guy is responsible basically for the creation of the pagan witchcraft, also known as Wicca. So this person definitely could be considered as a kind of founder, but only for that one branch out of those 4 I've mentioned. Otherwise, there are no founders in that general. Yeah.
The information that you gave us, so keeping that in the background, tell us, what did you find in your research? The title of your research goes something like the Christian influence on neo-pagan movement. So what influence are you talking about?
The neo-pagans revived their traditions in the 20th century, and I'd like to underline the word revived or reconstruct, which means that there is a kind of time gap between the pre-Christian past we had in Europe and between nowadays. So I really wanted to know whether is it possible to revive and reconstruct such an old traditions which are basically lost for contemporary Europeans. So I really wanted to find out what might be the final product of this kind of revival. What is that neo-paganism or contemporary paganism? That was the main question of my research. What would happen when people in the 20th and 21st century would like to try to revive and reconstruct
A tradition which is 1,000 to 2,000 years old. And what did you find out?
I found out in my research that contemporary paganism resembles rather more Christianity than some kind of pre-Christian traditions, because the way morality is considered, the way people are think about gods and goddesses really resembles the way Christian would think about God. The way people conceive of the ritual experience they might have, that and the conception of divine, all that basically is based on the Christian way of thinking. And if you are comparing the accounts what contemporary pagans would give you with accounts dealing with pre-Christian deities in ancient Greece, ancient Rome, for instance, you would find huge differences. The differences are, according to my research, so huge that you really can't say that contemporary paganism would resemble something pre-Christian. It's something completely different. The nature is completely different, and the nature of neo-pagan really is based on a Christian way of thinking, which means that we as Europeans are not able, at least to a certain sense, to come back to our pre-Christian traditions.
So if religion is a way of thinking about entities like God, the world, and the role that the God plays in the world, etc., you are telling us that these neo-pagans are not different from Christians in this way of thinking. Is that what you're saying?
That's basically the point.
That's what you found out in your research. Are they being considered now a separate religion in Europe?
Yeah, neo-paganism is considered as the distinctive religion, which is different from others, but it is also still considered as religion.
Yeah. Like even Hinduism is considered a religion in Europe for all practical purpose, so neo-pagans are also considered a religion.
Precisely, and many of those neo-pagan movements within different European countries were really striving for to be considered as religion. They really wanted to be official kind of religion.
So thank you, Pavel Horak. So thanks for explaining to us what neo-pagan movement in Europe is like. We would love to know more about it. Maybe next time when you visit SDM College. Thank you.
Thanks for having me.